Well, thank you for your prayers and support and everything. I've been in Nicaragua since January. The last time I was here was in the first part of the January. This here is a picture more in the mountains of Nicaragua. It's what Brother Mark said is most of the people in Nicaragua, you'll see that it says there's so many of them that are Christian, but then almost every other night in front of my house at like 4 in the morning, there's a big marching band with idols, and they're shaking them in front of my house, and they always start in front of my house for some reason, and they go through the town, and so you see a whole lot of idolatry. It's a different Catholic than what you would see here because they start mixing it in with some kind of like Indian stuff and Indian type, their cultures from before. So they have all kinds of different statues. You'll go out of some of the churches and they have a statue of a cowboy walking dogs. And certain days of the year, they'll walk it through the streets, bowing down to it and worshiping it, thinking that the more money they give to the statue, the more worship they give, the more blessed their home will be. And so you see a bunch of stuff, and you can ask them, are you a Christian? Oh, I've been a Christian my whole life. And then you ask them about Jesus Christ, and they have no idea about the plan of salvation. They do not know how to be saved. And one of the things we do in the Bible Institute there, we ask a lot of the Catholics, what does it mean to be justified before God? And for us as Christians, we know we're justified through Jesus Christ, through His blood. But with the Catholics, you ask them that, and that really holds them up, because then they have to think for a little while, and then they tell you, well, the more charity you give, the more works you do, the more you worship these idols, is what they pretty much say, the more of a chance you have to get in. And so it's really sad to see that, and it's really sad to see that the facts say there's so many Christians. It's also a country that's potential to be wealthy. But if you go to Nicaragua, it's one of the poorest countries in Central America. They have as far as Managua, it's not modern at all. You don't see any skyscrapers, you don't see any modern buildings. It's very poor because they've just gone through, about 30 years ago, they had a civil war. And so it really tore the country to pieces. You can go to houses and you can ask the people, how's the war affected your family? And almost everyone has family that has been killed. And you're talking about a civil war with machetes. So it's really sad, it's really graphic, and it's really hard just to talk to them about it. And a lot of them have closed their hearts up really hard and just attached to the Catholic Church for that, and they will not let go, and it's really hard. But this is a picture I took, and I love this picture because the horse looked at the camera. I thought that was really awesome. I actually got the horse to look at the camera. But there I am. This is in a place called San Jorge. We went on a small trip there. I took a small trip. Well, to the north of Nicaragua, I took a few buses up to go to the north of Nicaragua, and when I got there, these areas there's many villages all through the mountains, and they have no churches, most of them. You may find a Bible in a few of them, but a Bible that'll be sitting on a shelf and they don't know how to read. And so you see these places, they really don't, there's no education. Their families, they were born there, raised there. They don't really leave. They just stay in their village. They don't use money. A lot of them are a trading system. They trade their milk and their eggs and stuff for meat from somebody else, and they just go around trading with the other villages, close villages. So I took a trip there, and we have a few missions that are there in these areas. And before I show you the next picture, I want to show you the next picture, and they say that the top three fears in the world are, the first fear is the fear of insects and spiders. Okay, I have that fear. The second fear is the fear of heights. I also have that fear. And the third fear, the third is insects and spiders. The second fear is the heights, and the first fear is public speaking. And for my whole life, I've been scared to death to speak in public. And so I was gifted with the 3 top fears. And so in the next picture, I'll explain it, but don't show it. I was in the first of this year. I was in my house in Nicaragua, and I would wake up in the morning and I'd have a bite on my arm, and it was like a mosquito had bit me and it got infected. And so I was like, okay, this is like, I need to find out what this is because it's just not normal. And so I asked a friend. They were like, oh, it's nothing. It's called a chiche. And so I was like, okay, what's a chiche? And they said it's like a small bed bug. It's just a little bug that'll bite you like an ant. And it'll go away. Just don't mess with it. And clean your room. Make sure your bed and everything. Look under it and stuff. Make sure there's no bugs or nothing. So I cleaned my room out. There was nothing there. It was normal. It was fine. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I won't have any more problems. Well, I didn't have any more problems until last month when I got home from Costa Rica. Every 3 months I go to Costa Rica for my visa and stuff. So I went for the night and I came back. And when I got back, I walked in my shower. And in Nicaragua, the average shower is 2 5-gallon buckets, and water comes every other day. So you fill them up. So one stays for one day, and the other one, so when you use one for one day, as soon as you're finishing the other bucket to bathe, water comes the next day to fill them back up. And so that's my shower, and I have 2 5-gallon buckets and a cup. And so what happened is that I came home from Costa Rica, I went to my shower, and I looked, and there was this spider about this big. It was a huge spider, and it had claws on it, and it had a tail like a scorpion. And so anyways, I went, and I got my friend, and I called him over, and I said, hey, what's the name of this spider? And you can show the picture. I said, what's the name of this spider? And in English, they call it a scorpion spider. But there, he looked at it, and he said, oh, well, that's a chiche. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, that cannot be the same thing that was biting me at the first of the year. Because I didn't take time to look up the word chiche. I would just listen to the guy saying, oh, it's just a little bug. And so I looked it up on the internet, and I was scared to death that was what was biting me. And it said online that it'll suck your blood, and that's why it makes like a small, like a lump on your arm. And so you could just imagine how I was after that, just scared to death. And the next picture will show what the results. This is how I solved the problem. There I go. So I got a tent. I actually got this tent for the mission work, but what I did get was a mosquito net, a really good mosquito net. And every night now, whenever I go to sleep, I tuck it in really good, and I check it out with a flashlight to make sure there's nothing inside of it, to make sure I'm not going to have a chiche in my bed. So that's just a little bit different. That's a little bit crazy. The houses in Nicaragua, I've never been in a house of a person there that has air conditioning. I don't know if you can buy them there. The stores have them, but the houses are open. It's almost like a cabin, so it's all opened up. And so stuff like that, you just find out weird stuff. I also learned from that when somebody gives me a word that I don't know, to go to the internet and look it up. Just don't ask them, what does that mean? Because they're going to say like a spider, and it turns out to be, they're going to say an ant, and it turned out to be a big spider with claws. So that was scary. The next picture, I spend many days in that tent there. I use it a lot when I travel. This is a trip I took in March to Espavel, which is the jungles in Nicaragua. And you go about 5 hours across land in Nicaragua, and then you go up north about an hour and a half on just like complete off-road, big rocks, and you're climbing through with the vehicles and stuff. And then when you get there's a fence, and you get to the end, and there's a fence. And we had a preacher that was waiting for us with about 20 horses. And I went with a group from Arkansas to translate. And whenever we got there, we rode the horses. You see a horse. Rode them for about 2 hours through the jungle. You can see the jungle, the top right. It's a big-time jungle, range jungle. Sometimes the horses would have to cross, and you'd have to climb over trees or stuff like that to get to the jungle. And when we got there, you see there were so many children and families and people that were living in the jungle. It was just crazy. And another thing I learned that I saw that was just completely crazy was that I would joke with some of the youth that are like 14, 15 years old. And I would ask them, there'd be, like one of the girls, I asked her, so where's your boyfriend at? Which one's your boyfriend? And she was like, no, I'm married. And I'm like, okay, I guess she's joking. And then later on, a guy comes and was hugging her and stuff, and the preacher said that they had just got married. And so I'm thinking, that's really weird. She's 14. And then so as I'm talking to the youth and I start meeting what I would say would be youth, I start finding out that they're 14, 15, 16 years old, and they all get married. And so, thank you. So I find out that they all get married at 14, 15, 16 years old. And I'm thinking, well, this is really hard. And we were going, and one of my jobs to be there was also try to help start the youth group. So I told the minister, I can't really start a youth group when they go from children's church to married. You have to start a young, they go from children's church straight to getting married. So I thought that was a really different culture. Also, when they got married, a few of them would do it in the church, but most of them, the guy would build a house and a farm off in the jungle and be like, okay, you're my wife, come with me, and then they're married. So I was like, this is not the place I want to be right now, because I might get married and not even know it. You know what I mean? But it was really awesome what God was doing there to see the people. These people are really, really isolated, and they have. I would talk to some of the people that were there. One of the ladies that was on a horse with her 2 children, and I asked her where had they come from, and she said they came from 5 hours. I was already way in the jungles. There was no electricity, nothing. It was really isolated. And she said she came from 5 hours more into the jungles, and she said there's no churches. This is the church, and then there's no more into the jungles, going up into the northeastern Nicaragua, all that. And they start mixing in with a few different languages. It's really isolated, unreached people of Nicaragua. And so the next page, this is where I live, between Masaya and Granada. There's a little lake, a little dot, a water dot. Let's try to see if I can, you see how much I'm shaking? Just crazy. Right there, there's a dot. Well, that's actually, the dot there was a volcano, and years back the volcano exploded and sunk in, and it filled with water. And so it's really cool. You can go and you can swim in the lake down there, and it's a big circle. It's called the Laguna de Apoyo. And when you're swimming, it's all volcanic rock around it and everything. So it's really awesome. We go swimming a whole lot there, and we do a lot of Bible studies there. Also, there's volcanoes all through the left coast on Nicaragua. Just so many volcanoes. This last year we were getting a lot. These past few months we were getting a whole lot of earthquakes, and one volcano erupted. I think I broke here. Yeah, restricted budget went out, I think.
Sometimes gases build up on the bottom of those volcanic lakes. And those earthquakes can shift that dioxide or whatever, and it comes out.
And it'll come out and
kill people around those lakes like that.
Well, these lakes here are famous because the big lake here is the only lake in the world that has saltwater fish and fresh water. It was closed off from the ocean and the salt, so it has sharks and stuff inside the big lake. But they right through here, a volcano erupted here recently, and it was yeah, that was like half of Nicaragua I just showed you, so somewhere around there. But a volcano erupted, and you could just feel the earthquakes. It was very scary. People just standing outside and just really scared. A lot of people scared. 40 years ago, an earthquake hit Managua, and it destroyed the entire capital. So that shows you another thing, that many companies don't want to invest in Nicaragua because the earthquakes and everything is just being destroyed. Why go down there and build $1 million building, in the next year it just gets destroyed? They say every 40 years a big earthquake hits, and so it's been 40 years. So I decided to come back now. I can figure it out. No, I'm just playing. But this is where I live, where the first arrow is. This is Bluefields to the right, and Bluefields is, you have to cross through the land through here, and when you get here, Espavel's right here in the jungles, and all this here is really unreached. You can see there's no established cities because it's unreached. It's completely unreached, and it's very isolated. Most of the places you're going to get there by horseback, and there are no roads cut through. There's a few towns up through here now on this map. I think this map's a little bit earlier, but there's towns coming that are starting through, and there's a road that goes up to the north, and there's a famous port through there, and it makes me look like I'm really nervous. I don't know why I'm shaking so much. I'm not really nervous that much. That's probably what it is. But on Bluefields, to get to Bluefields, you ride a car across Nicaragua, and when you get here, there's a river called the Rio Escondido, which is the hidden river. And from the river, you have to take a boat for an hour and a half to get to Bluefields. And Bluefields is really interesting because it's on the coast. It's very sad because it's got a bunch of drug trafficking from all the way down from Colombia going up through on boats and stuff. So you can, I would actually seriously sit on the preacher's porch, and on the right corner you would see them selling drugs, walking around, kids and stuff, and they'll have bags in their hands selling it. And so it's like just their culture is really involved in the drugs, or selling drugs and cocaine, marijuana. It's one of the most dangerous places in Nicaragua, Bluefields, because it's so isolated. It was established by a pirate, and his last name was Bluefield, something like that. It was spelled close to Bluefields, and so that's where it's got its name from. And that's why there's no roads in, because they would use the boats to come in. And that's where they established this big city. And you can see on the next page, we started a church there 3 years ago. When I went for 2 months, and this is when I went for 2 months 3 years ago in the summer. And this is Noel. And Oscar is the missionary there with me in Catarina. He's the missionary that lives there. He's from Nicaragua, and he lived there. He studied here in the States. But he's the BMA missionary there. He started meeting with Noel. And the first trip he took Noel, the pastor was drunk in bed. And Noel had called him, "Hey, I want you to come." And Oscar just showed up to surprise him, and he was drunk in bed. And so from then on, Oscar just starts discipling him months after, starts meeting with him more. I went with him on a few trips, like this trip here, where it was like his third trip to go to this area, Oscar's third trip, to just sit down with the husband, his wife, and 2 of his children, and start discipling, working with. One daughter was working in a casino. The other son was almost always in the streets. The wife would just stayed at home. They have a son that's blind, and he can't talk that very well. So he's really smart, but he can't talk that well, and he's blind. But we started working with him. This is in 2011 on the left. That was 2010, the summer of 2010 on the right. This is 2011 on the left. The first part of, the end of 2011, because they trained him for quite a while, because he was found just less than a year before that, he was drunk in bed. So they had to disciple him and train him and stuff, and watch him spiritually. And God started using his family, and this is when they first started open. This is Tammy, Oscar's wife, and she's doing a small study with his children and some of the neighbors, some of his nieces and nephews. And so the next picture is the first of this year. This is what God has done in just a really short time. This is a youth group in Bluefields. This is all the youth group. This is Pastor Noel's son. So in a year, it took a little bit more than half a year to start training them, working with them. And then at the end of last year, they started opening up a little bit, saying, invite some of your family, start discipling them. And then at the beginning of this year, I went again, and I was really surprised. This trip I went on my own, and when I got there, we opened up another house church. They sent me to help them open up another house church because there's too many people. They could not fit in the house, and they could not fit in the front yard. They're meeting in the front yard. They couldn't fit in the house, so half of them were in the house, half were in the front yard, and he would talk and he would carry through. But they said it was really hard, and so they wanted to open up another house church until they can find some land to put a church up. And so this is the youth group. They're still meeting like this. They have two youth groups now. One youth group they've pretty much started two churches. Each church has their own youth group, the children's church. The children do not fit in the house. The last I heard, they were going to a small plot of land, and they were sitting down because there was a good 60 children, and they would not fit for nothing in the house. So this is what God has done in just 2 years, from the preacher being in his bed drunk to a youth group of about 40 youth they have now today. So the next picture is I took a trip. He took me out. He's a fisherman. He used to be a welder there, welding boats, but he changed his job, and now he's a fisherman. And it was awesome because when I went with him to go fishing out in the ocean, he has a little canoe boat, and we were going out about 3 in the morning, and it was a full moon, and there was no clouds, and the water was just still. There was nothing moving, and it was just like you could almost walk across it. And it was beautiful to see the moon reflecting off of it. And I turn around to look at the preacher, and behind him you see the Bluefields. You see all the lights. It's lit up on the coast. And I'm just thinking, well, this is like I'm in the middle of the ocean out here on an isolated city on the side of Nicaragua with a preacher, some guy who a few years ago, just to see what God has been doing in his church was just, I didn't have words to say. I couldn't even say nothing. I was just like, wow. And just to turn around, and he looked, he said, and he told me, it's nice, isn't it? And I said, yeah, that's really beautiful. And he said, that's my mission field. And it just blew me off. It just blew me out of the boat almost. But just to see him turn and just see him sitting there and just him talking about the mission field behind him, the lights. And he told me every morning he goes out to go fishing, shrimp fishing, and then he uses the shrimp to catch fish and sell fish and shrimp. And he told me that every morning he goes out, he just stops, he turns, and he looks at his mission field, and he prays for Bluefields. And then he goes out to fish for the day. And he also told me he was kept throwing out the net. He asked me if I wanted to try to throw it out. And I was like, no, I'm going to fall off the boat if I try to throw that out. And so he told me every time he throws it out, he's thinking of Christ when he said that you're no longer going to be, you're going to be fishers of men, when he was talking to the apostles, and so his disciples. And so he's saying that God changed him from being a fisherman of fish to being a fisherman of men. And so it was very beautiful. He was thinking more than having to work for his food. He was thinking that God has placed me here for this village of Bluefields. So the next picture, I found out that I cannot be in, a few things happened on the ship. The first, I found out I cannot drink. You should not drink a Coke without eating anything and then go out into the ocean in a canoe. I found that out because you just move like this the whole time. And so I got pretty sick. The other thing I found out is that you need off. You need a whole bunch of off. And be very careful because a lot of these places, the mosquitoes and stuff will carry a bunch of epidemic diseases like dengue, malaria. I spent a lot of time in isolated areas, and that's where you find this at, in the jungles and the mountains. And so I ended up getting sick for a week, and that was horrible. The doctors, even one of my friends that stayed the first night with me in the hospital, they were all saying, well, he's most likely going to pass away. Because my fever was just so bad, and they couldn't do nothing. With dengue, they can't give you medicine to help it. They can only give you fever medicine. And I was running 104 for the first 4 days. And so they stopped giving me medicine. They're like, we can't give them anything else. It's not doing nothing. Just stick them in the shower. And so they had a chair in the shower, and I'd go and sit. They'd put me in the chair, and they'd turn it on full blast, just freezing, like ice cold water. And I would just sit there like, it was so horrible. It was awful. But thanks to everyone's prayers and everything, I made it out of that hospital. And that was something that was just really, really a bad experience. But And that happened in Bluefields. And I had a lot of people tell me, well, I bet you'll never go back to Bluefields. But I'll say that after the stuff that God let me experience in Bluefields, I would love to go back, and any opportunity to be able to go back and just be able to visit with the preacher and just see what God's doing in this area and be able to help them out in any way that I can. The next picture, that was the mission of Bluefields, and that's Pastor Noel. So be praying for Pastor Noel in Bluefields, Nicaragua. The next one is, this is in Las Maderas. At the very end of last year, a guy named Noel, one of the guys there in Nicaragua, him and his wife and his daughter, they said, his 2 daughters, they said, hey, we want to open our house up. We're in a place called Las Maderas, which is about an hour and a half from where I live. And they said, we want somebody to come and to work with us and train us. We want to start a church in our house. There's no churches in our village. It's about 5,000 people where they live at. And they were like, there's no churches here. We want y'all to come and start a church. And so what happened is that we spent some time, and I would go with Oscar quite a bit. This is Oscar. Here he is again. I would travel a whole lot with him and start training the family, working with Daniel is the preacher here, and working with him. And I would go a few times on my own and work with Daniel and his family and teach them just how to pray, just basic discipleship stuff. After that, this happened at the very end of last year, just his family. The very beginning of this year, we opened up a small church inside of his house. And you can see this is his daughter. And that's Danielle, and his wife is over here. And this is all some of the members. This guy here was very known in the village. It's about the size of Atlanta, but it's all packed together in the Spanish areas. Really, a lot of people live in one house and stuff. So it looks smaller, but if you start looking at how many people are there, there's so many people. Well, Donald, this guy here, he was very known for being speaking a lot of vulgar, very bad language, and drinking a whole lot. The drunk for the town and stuff, and he started coming to these house group meetings. He was one of the first members that came, and I'd always been praying for him. And Oscar, we just said, there's something about this guy. Let's just keep praying for him. Let's keep praying for him. God's going to work in his heart. And here, about 2 months ago, he accepted Christ. And about 3 months ago, he accepted Christ. And this was before. This is how much that people they had. And then everyone here accepted Christ. And now we had to move out of the house, the living room, and we're sitting outside the front yard because there's too many members. Everybody in the town saw that. Hey, Donald, there's something, look at his life has changed. And they started coming and they're baptizing every week and baptizing and discipling, sending some people from the neighboring churches to help disciple because God is just growing, just bringing people in this area of Las Maderas. As far as we know, it's the only church in this village of about 5,000. And it's a very poor place also. Daniel couldn't believe it. He was like, hey, the very end of last year I told y'all that we wanted to open a church. And then this year, right now, he can sit down in the children's church and see 60 children out on his front yard just playing games and with the CCC soccer ball, playing some games and playing stuff like that, just out there having a great time. And he's just like, he was thinking he was going to try. He told us that he was praying. He was thinking that he was going to let us know he wanted to start a church in his house. And maybe from 5 or 10 years from now, he'd have a small group in his living room. And just see what God did in less than a year. It's done. They're looking for land also to put a church because they're having to meet outside. And this is probably half of the members they have now, here and here, right here. And then they all go back. There's more back here waiting over here. And around this side here, there's other ones sitting all back around Oscar. And so it's just beautiful to see how God is working in Las Maderas. The next picture is... This is what God has been doing with Christ Center Champions in Nicaragua. I went last month, and I took a soccer ball with me. You can see the soccer ball down here. And I hopped on some buses, and I took off to San Jorge. This is where I took the picture of the horse. I was on the horse. And when I showed up, I had contact with this guy here, and I let him know. I called him and said, hey, I'm coming. I'm going to bring a soccer ball. And I have shirts and stuff, he had the shirts there. He had them in a box. And I told him, we're going to use the shirts and everything. And I had a few with me. And we're going to have the Soccer Christ Center Champions meeting. And they were doing it at the first of the year, and then they stopped because the rain season started really bad. And it's every single day, and the rainforest area is just pouring rain. And so they had stopped, but I came back and I told them, it's okay if it rains. Let's just keep playing this. Let's keep strong in this ministry because I know what God can do in this. And God had really been putting it on my heart. So I traveled there with a football. And the first day, we went to San Jorge. I showed up at 5:30 at night. I stayed the night. They go to bed around 7 there. There's no electricity at all. And so when the sun's gone, you go to sleep. When it's up, you wake up. We woke up around 5 o'clock and went straight to this mission, San Jorge. I rode a motorcycle through the mountains And when you finally get there, it's a small village. You see the small houses and everything. A lot of people that all use horses. It's almost what you would think of Texas in a Western movie. That's almost exactly how it is. It's all cooking by fire, and it's just like you would see Texas in a Western movie. And they would all ask me, do I know John Wayne? And I thought that was hilarious. I was like, no, I do not know John Wayne. Because to them, that's like their life now. They're like, yeah, he's like one of us. And so that was hilarious. I showed up to San Jorge, and to my surprise, I was thinking, there's 5. This is in San Jorge. This guy here, Sindulfo. I broke your pen again. This is Sindulfo. He's the pastor there, and he had 5 youth members. And they were very faithful. 3 of them were his children. So 3 of them were his children, and 2 of them were extra people from the village, the youth. And when I showed up to play the soccer there, 25 youth showed up. And we did music. We played some songs on the guitar, and they were playing Hillsong. Is our God move the mountains? Our Cristo puede mover montañas. Our God can move the mountains. That's what they were singing about. And I'm just sitting there thinking, our God is mighty to save. That's what it is, mighty to save. And I was just thinking, a part of it says, Jesus, you can move the mountains. And I'm sitting there just looking around. It's all mountains around us. I'm thinking, this is like the perfect song to be right here. And as they're doing this, a lot of these youth here, they're, like I said, 5 of them. Let's just say 1, 2, 3, these 5 right here are Christian. And all of these here have nothing to do with the church or Christ. Most of them never have seen a Bible to open up a Bible and stuff. And so we started doing the ministry with them. And I spoke that day about how we were, I mentioned that about we're in the mountains. You hear the song and stuff like that in Christ. And I gave the plan of salvation, and I spoke to them. And they were very, very interested. And then this preacher just couldn't believe it because he had 5 people in his youth, and that one day it went from 5 to 25 because he said the very next Sunday they were all showing up, and they were asking, hey, we're going to play. How many days can we do it in a week? How many days in the week can we play? Can we play the sports ministry? And I told them how many days. The preacher asked me, how many days are they allowed to do this? And I said, how many days can you do it? He told me, I was thinking about every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday or Friday. And I was like, that's great. You can have a church, a sports ministry, like 3 or 4 times a week, how you want to do it. And so, as far as I know now, they're meeting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then Saturday they have youth group, and Sunday they have church. And so it's awesome to see what God just did in that short trip there. This is the first day I went to San Jorge, and we had 25 show up. The next day, the next picture, I went to a place called Las Lomas, and there we had 20 show up. And so these villages, if you walk, they're about 30 minutes of walking distance from each other. And they don't have vehicles, so you have to walk there. They're 30 minutes from each other. And when I got here, it was awesome. It was awesome also. You can see a mountain behind me, a small mountain, a small hill. And it's pretty funny because they'll go up on top of these. They'll hike all the way up to the top of that mountain on the back. And you'll see somebody up there with a cell phone. And you're just like, what? Because they have no signal. And then there'd be somebody up there just sending a message, and they have 1 bar. And I'm just like, that is so awesome. And Espavel in the jungle, how they get cell phone signal is that there's a tree and it has a ladder on it, and it's 30 minutes from the village up on a hill. So you go all the way up on the hill by horse, and you go up to the top of the hill, and then you climb the ladder, and at the top of the ladder you get cell phone, you get a bar. And so that's how we inform the preacher. We inform the preacher that we're coming, or if he's open for that week, we let him send him a message. And when he goes to the top of that hill, the top of the tree, and sit on the top of the ladder, the messages arrive, and he reads it, and he sends us, yes, I'll be there. And so that's how he was there waiting for us. But it's just so crazy how you're in the middle of a jungle, and you can find somewhere where there's going to be at least 1 little bar of cell phone. And what they will do is funny because at night they would stand in front of the street. And there's also in this town, there's a street now, and it's like a small circle about this big. You can almost draw it with your hand. And this circle here had 1 bar of cell phone. And so when you go there at night around 6:30 when the sun starts going down, it would be full of people, that little circle, and they're all standing by each other. And it's mostly teenage girls and chatting with a guy from the Capitol or something like that, a boyfriend they have. And so they're all sitting there in the circle together, typing messages. And it was funny. When I was there, I was laughing and I was teasing them. And then this really elderly lady showed up with her cell phone, a really big cell phone she had. And she walks and she stands in the middle of them. And she starts screaming in her phone. And there's a few of them trying to talk. And they're like, hold on a second. And she's screaming, hello. So I thought that was so awesome. That was hilarious. But that's... some of them do get cell phones. They'll trade in animals to the Capitol, and they will get a little bit of money, or people will come with cell phones and trade stuff. Like you can trade for a certain cell phone, you can trade the bigger the pig is, or a small cow for like 2 or 3 cell phones, and they'll put it in a little vent. The vents, they have little stores there, and it has a solar panel. There's one with a solar panel, and they'll put a TV out, a small TV about this big, a small little bitty TV. And at night, you'll go there, and they're sitting around in horses, about 30 people on their horses, just sitting there watching the news. So it's a completely different world. But this is Las Lomas, and this is what God was doing and has been doing in Las Lomas. They have many friends with the village in San Jorge, which is right next to them, 30 minutes from them, and they have been telling me and sending me messages, hey, we want to have a tournament, and we want to have a tournament against each other with the sports ministry. We're playing 3 times a week. They're also playing 3 times a week, and they said, we want to have a tournament. And so I told them that would be awesome. Let me see what happens, because God was starting to grow the ministry, the sports ministry, really fast. Just in 2 days, we had 45 members, and just really fast. And this last Monday, I was able to help 2 of my friends to go to these villages, and they played with them, and they played with the other teams, and they loved it so much. And then the preacher for this church, which was the other guy in blue, he said that he was planning on starting in 2 more missions that he has. And he said, the guys, they wrote me a message on Facebook, and they said, we went and we started in one of them, and 20 more youth showed up in that one. And they're supposed to go, he was supposed to go yesterday. He's either there now, or he went yesterday to start it in the other mission that he wanted to start it in. And so that will be 4 teams in about, one of them is an hour, and one of them is 30 minutes, the other one's 45 minutes. So it's sort of in a line. And so they're going to have a tournament. We're going to have a tournament in November. My plans are having a tournament in November to have a small Christ Center Champions trophy, and have the devotionals. So it'll be all the youth sitting there, and we'll have 2 or 3 people come from Catarina, the missionary Oscar, and then I'll be sharing. So we'll be sharing about Christ Center Champions here, and also about the other countries, what the other countries are doing with Christ Center Champions from Cambodia and the other countries that have it. And so this is what God did in 2 days, from 0 to 45. The next picture, yes sir. This is just random pictures. The last picture is some random stuff in Nicaragua. You can see the soccer ball down here. I use these balls for presentation now, because I found out that in Nicaragua they're crazy about soccer, so they play so much soccer and everything. And so this is what we use for presentation. These are a normal street in Nicaragua. You see cows everywhere, and this is a dude with very, very good balance. You see this guy, they make these things here, and this guy was just like balancing them through the streets with cows running by him and stuff, horses running by him, and those little taxis right here running beside him. And he's got 50 baskets on his head. And so you just every now and then, I've lived there, so I'll see parrots, I see a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's normal, because I've been living there so long. It doesn't stick out to me now. But every now and then you'll be walking down the street, and just something happens. You're just like, wow, this is a whole different country. This is not Kansas. But this is also Nicaragua. Bananas are everywhere. You see banana trees everywhere. A lot of the missions, they put up the banana trees and help donate it to some of the members and stuff. But this is what God has been doing in Nicaragua. I have a bunch of stories, a bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of stuff to share and everything. And I send out a few newsletters. I'm learning how to do newsletters. I'm not that good at them yet, but I talked to Ed, and he's going to help me out some. And so I'll be letting you know more on Nicaragua. If y'all want an email, or if y'all have anything, if y'all want me to send y'all newsletters and stuff, I can get y'all some newsletters. And also Mark will have all the stuff here. So just be praying for Nicaragua, be praying for Brother Noel in Bluefields, and Brother Daniel and Las Maderas, and what God will be doing here shortly in Nicaragua with Christ Center Champions and with Centro de Vida. And thank you for inviting me to share today.